Hindi ako nakikialam. Pwede sabihin, kung protracted ito, yung mga kasama natin, at they equip with candies or what. Dahil, ano ko din. So, yung hindi lang ang sasabi halata, huwag naman yung crispy pata at kari-kari. Okay, no, I just thought about it. Minsan, di ba? Minsan magdamara. Yeah, thank you. sabi sa akin, ang bilis daw. Deterrent daw ako. Muna
Hindi po ah. Hello. Hi. Hi. Hello. Hi. Gusto daw ni Joel, TESDA muna. Parang English lang.
Wala kasi silang mga tapos
Sino ang sagot?
Ako na rin magmamajority leader. Ako na rin magtatanong.
What's this?
ang questions ko on
Sa mga loob ko ng tanong na dito. Sa akin ng BI, may karapatan na patanggal dito. Research ko. Pero hindi. Sabi lang. Here in our position, and when it comes to working in the department of business, hindi man lang ginawa eh. Hindi, nag-iigana ko lang yun. Tapos, sa consideration of budget,
Mr. President.
Session resumed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we resume consideration of House Bill number 8169, stated in Committee Report number 538.
Any objection? Hearing none.
Move that we consider the budget of the Department of Labor and Employment and its attached agencies, and move that we recognize the distinguished sponsor, the Vice Chair of the Committee on Finance, Senator Sani Angara.
Vice Chair Senator Angara is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Majority Leader. Thank you, Presiding Officer. Good morning to our Dole family.
May I be acknowledged to participate in the deliberation on the budget of the Department of Labor and Employment and its attached agencies.
Senator Villanueva is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the distinguished gentleman from Aurora yield to some questions from this representation.
To the extent that I can answer the questions of the brilliant Chairman of the Committee on Labor.
With that, I will no longer ask questions, Mr. President. I'm just kidding. Just for the record and on the onset, we'd like to put on record, Mr. President, that this representation fully supports the budget of the Department of Labor and Employment and its attached agencies, not only because of the fact that this representation was once part of one Dole family. I miss playing basketball with Dole attached agencies during our time in TESDA, and
I'm sure they don't miss it. Mr. President.
Just the same, Mr. President, I have some very short questions with regard to Dole's actions specifically, Mr. President, with the recorded incidents of apprehension of illegal foreign workers. There were alarming revelations, Mr. President, in the past hearings in the Committee on Labor. If you would recall, the 1,316 Chinese workers were caught in Fontana working for Next Games, an online gambling operation. Pero nung nag-apply po sila, BPO company sila. Noong May 23, 2017, there were 9 Chinese nationals and Indonesian national caught operating dredging vessel that is collecting black sand in San Felipe, Zambales. On May 2, 2018, Mr. President, a waitress, Mr. President, from Barangay Tambo in Parañaque was beaten by a Chinese chef. But when the Chinese chef was asked to produce his work visa, or at least a passport, he was unable to produce these documents. I can go on and on and on, Mr. President, no? But let me just also point out here sa kapitbahay po natin dito sa May Diosdado Macapagal Avenue, 34 Chinese nationals were caught in a construction site, September 6, 2018. Nung huli po, November 22, illegal Chinese workers also were arrested in Pasig. 93 of them, Mr. President. Everything that I'm saying here, perhaps, is just the tip of the iceberg, Mr. President. And so my first question is that what have we been doing, Mr. President, with regard to this particular incidents, Mr. President? And let me remind our friends from the Department of Labor and Employment of Article 12, Section 12 in our Constitution that states yung pong preferential hiring of workers should be Filipinos. Dapat kababayan po natin. Inuulitin ko po, dahil na may misinterpret tayo ng ilang kaibigan sa media, yung legal ho, wala ho tayong problema dun eh. Hindi ho natin pinoproblema yung legal. Ang masakit pong isipin yung illegal sapagkat ito po'y trabaho na nananakaw para sa ating mga kababayan.
Yes, we fully agree with the gentleman, and we laud him for his efforts in upholding the Constitution and giving flesh to the provisions of the Labor Code. According to the Department, Your Honor, Mr. President, for 2017, of the 60,000 or so establishments inspected, 99% are compliant, with 212 establishments are non-compliant. Having said that, they have included some of the establishments mentioned by the good gentleman from Bulacan, the chairman of the Committee on Labor, including the online gaming or POGOs. And as part of their ongoing efforts, they are doing the following. They are convening an interagency task force composed of the DOLE, the DOJ, the DFA, the DPWH, the BI, PAGCOR, TESDA, CDC or Clark Development Corporation, CESA, and SPMA. Secondly, they are conducting advocacy among licensed POGOs and recommending that all foreign nationals intending to work in online gaming be issued AEPs prior to the issuance of PAGCOR license to POGO applicants. Thirdly, there is a joint review amendment of policies with respect to the issuance of special work permits. Fourthly, they propose the issuance of an interagency joint memorandum circular with respect to the application of a work visa in the consular office in the country of origin of the worker. And lastly, Your Honor, to intensify their routine inspection of establishments to ensure full compliance with the labor rules mentioned by the good gentleman.
Well, we laud the efforts of the Department of Labor and Employment in ensuring that our laws are being implemented. But just for the record, Mr. President, would the distinguished sponsor agree with me that only the Department of Labor and Employment has the sole and exclusive right to issue alien employment permits? Is that correct, Mr. President?
Yes, the heads are nodding.
Yes, sir. Under our
And may I ask the distinguished sponsor, why is the Department of Labor and Employment, bakit po sila lamang ang may ganitong uri ng kapangyarihan na magbigay ng alien employment permits sa sino mang mga banyaga na gustong magkaroon o magtrabaho dito sa ating bansa? What is the importance of these AEPs being given by DOLE, Mr. President?
This is pursuant to its mandate under the Labor Code and the Constitution, Your Honor, to ensure full employment, which is one of the main goals of the government, and thus for employment permits of non-resident aliens under Article 40 of the Labor Code, they must obtain an employment permit from the Department of Labor.
Would the distinguished gentleman agree with me that it is because only the Department of Labor and Employment would have the capacity and technical know-how to distinguish if these particular jobs available in the country hindi po kayang punan ng ating mga kababayang Pilipino? Am I correct to say that,
Yes,
Mr.
Your Honor.
President? And that is why, Mr. President, it has come to my attention during our last November 26 hearing with the Committee on Labor, Mr. President, we discovered that it is not only DOLE issuing AEPs or, well, AEPs, DOLE lang po. But when you talk about special working permits, ang Bureau of Immigration ay nag-i-issue din. In fact, during our hearing, we found out that they were able to issue about 119,000 special working permits. Nalito po kami dito, Mr. President, because even sa CESA, I'm sure the distinguished gentleman from Aurora would concur, sa APECO, sa SBMA, sa CDC, sa Clark Development doon sa Pampanga, bago po silang mag-issue ng kanilang working visa, prerequisite po, Mr. President, ito pong AEPs na ini-issue ng DOLE. And so we were surprised that the Bureau of Immigration would issue special working permits. And when we asked yung breakdown nitong special working permits, ang sinagot pa sa atin ng Bureau of Immigration, ini-issue daw po nila ito doon sa mga nagko-concert at yung ilang imports ng PBA. Kaya nga po ang sagot natin, hindi naman siguro 119,000 yung nagko-concert at nagiging import ng PBA. Mr. President, my only concern is that what is DOLE doing, Mr. President? Because the Bureau of Immigration is saying they had a, what you call, an agreement, Mr. President, with the Department of Labor and Employment. And I wanted to find out if this stands. And I wanted to find out kung ano yung role ng DOLE sa pag-issue ng, again, itong special working permit na ini-issue ng Bureau of Immigration.
I think historically they've had this memorandum, Your Honor, in the Bureau of Immigration, which allows them to issue the SWP or the Special Work Permit for periods not exceeding 6 months. Pero I think tama ho kayo na minsan inaabuso at hindi naman po 119,000 ang nakikita nating import sa PBA at all of these casual employees. Dapat during the time of Secretary Santo Tomas, there was a memo issued to all regional directors in March 2005 that the SWP should be non-extendable. Thus, pagtapos na po yung kontrata o yung temporary employment, dapat hindi na po pwedeng i-renew at dadaan na po sa DOLE dahil in the nature of permanent or regular employment na po yung trabaho na binibigay.
May we know, Mr. President, kung ano ho yung memorandum of agreement na yun, just to be clarified, because I have here with me a memorandum order number AFFJR 05009 na ang tanging Bureau of Immigration lamang ang nag-issue. I'm asking this question, Mr. President, because upon doing research, the gentleman from Aurora is correct in stating that in 2005, during the time of Secretary Santo Tomas, nahihirapan po o tumatagal daw yung proseso ng pag-issue ng alien employment permits. And so, nagtap po sila, tinap nilang Bureau of Immigration para sila na rin ay mabigyan ng pagkakataon na mag-issue ng sa maikling panahon itong tinatawag na special working permits. But then after that, Mr. President, nag-issue ang BI nitong Memorandum Order number AFFJR 05009 which is still controlling to this day. Wala ko, hindi kasama dito, and I would like to clarify this kung totoo, na hindi naman kasama dito ang Department of Labor and Employment because DOLE issued Department Order number 186 series of 2017 which governs the implementation of Article 41 of the Labor Code. Article 41 of the Labor Code provides that all foreign nationals who seek employment are required to secure an alien employment permit from the department. So just to manifest for the record, Mr. President, hindi ko kasama ang DOLE dito sa MOAFFRJR 05009.
Tama po, Your Honor. That was a memorandum issued in February by the late Commissioner Fernandez of the BI. And I think this is the one that has been abused in the practice. That's why lumobo po talaga yung bilang ng mga nagtatrabaho dito. Although,
and these are legal, Mr. President, let me point out, these are legal Chinese workers. Hindi yung kasama dito yung in-enumerate natin, saksakan ng daming illegal na workers, Mr. President.
Yes, and again, I laud the gentleman for protecting the jobs for Filipinos because there is a condition under the Labor Code that there must be no local available to perform this. So, for construction workers, sigurado naman tayo, palagay ko na I've been hearing that there is a shortage of construction workers in some parts of the country. So nakakalungkot talaga yung in-expose po ng ating Chairman of Labor, Senator Villanueva, na merong banyaga pa na gumagawa ng basic na trabaho dito and yet marami pa rin walang trabaho. So talagang I laud the gentleman and I think as a result of your efforts, there is now a joint review or amendment of policies with respect to the issuance of the SWP or the Special Work Permit to ensure that only qualified foreign nationals are allowed to work here and subject to the requirements of existing laws. So itong yung nabanggit po ninyong BI Memorandum Order AFF number 05-009, palagay ko re-repasuhin na po ito at kung posible, I am inquiring if they are willing to issue a joint memorandum circular. Sabi nila, pag-aaralan daw nila kung pwede ho.
That's where I'm going, Mr. President, because it appears to me, mag-isa na gumawa ng memorandum order ang Bureau of Immigration to issue special working permits without coordination with the Department of Labor and Employment. Hindi lang ho yung order at labor code ang sinusuway nito, ang mismong kaluluwa ng lahat ng ating rules dito sa ating bansa, ang mismong saligang batas natin, ang sinusuway po nito. And I was told, Mr. President, that during that time when DOLE and BI had that agreement, it is because, yun nga ho, no, para ma-expedite yung pag-issue ng working permits for short-term working permits. At very specific daw po ito, if I'm not mistaken, I hope that the Department of Labor and Employment would confirm this. Very strict po ito at specific. Ano ba ang mga sektor na ito? Ano ba itong mga supposed to be highly technical jobs na ito? Parang nang sa ganon, masiguro talaga na hindi kasi available o hindi kayang gampanan ng ating mga kababayan itong particular job na ito. But then all of a sudden, with this MO number AFFJR05009, naging general na. Parang lahat na pwede na hong pasukin. Kaya ho, yun nga po, nakakalungkot yung mga illegal workers na nahuli. Construction workers, dun sa mining site na binanggit natin, yung pong waitress dito po sa, at cashier dito po sa Tambo, Parañaque. Susunod hong tatalakayin natin, budget ng TESDA. Tatanong din na natin, meron po bang natitrain na cashier, na waiter, na construction worker, na po pwedeng gumawa nitong mga trabaho ito? And I'm sure the answer would be yes, Mr. President.
We agree. I think the answer would be, we agree with the gentleman, the answer would be yes, Mr. President.
But I hope, and at the proper time, this representation would again raise this issue with the budget of the Bureau of Immigration, and I hope the Department of Labor and Employment would support this initiative of this representation to ensure that we are taking care of the jobs available for our kababayans, Mr. President.
Well, they are all nodding their heads, Mr. President, and I think the Secretary is a man of his word, so we'll take him at his word.
I fully agree with that statement made by our sponsor, that the Secretary is a man of his word, and I admire and highly respect the Secretary of Labor and Employment. Mr. President, one last thing on this particular issue. You know, about a week ago, I was surprised to see a headline that says, go easy on illegal Chinese workers, and then may gitling po nakalagay, Belyo. So I was surprised, no? And then I look at the entire report. But looking at the entire report, maayos naman ho, Mr. President. So medyo intrigero lang yung headline. But I'm glad that the Secretary explained very well the importance of diplomacy.
Maybe someone from the DOLE wants the Secretary's job, Your Honor. And
Is he or she around, Mr. President?
I'm just kidding, Mr. President.
Well, Mr. President, I'd like to raise this particular issue because I'd like to get the stand and the position of the Department of Labor with regard to this issue, so that it will be very clear that we are not in any way tolerating illegal workers. Am I correct to say that, Mr. President?
Yes, certainly. They fully agree with you, Your Honor.
Wala pong bansa, malaki, maliit, na dapat mag-tolerate ng illegal workers. Kahit ho, meron tayong mga kababayan sa ibang bansa na masasabi o magiging o papasok doon sa kategorya ng illegal workers, hindi ho natin tinotolerate. So in fact, we wanted them to come back o ayusin yung papers nila at tinutulungan pa nga po yun ng ating pamahalaan. Another thing, Mr. President, is that hindi mo siguro dapat ikumpara yung ating sitwasyon with the situation of China, because China is a superpower. They have all the money and the resources to create jobs and to help their countrymen. May we know if the leadership of DOLE would agree to this premise, Mr. President, na hindi tayo pareho. Hindi pwedeng sabihin, pareho lang tayo. May illegal workers din sa Macau, doon sa Hong Kong, doon sa Beijing, sa Shanghai.
Yes,
Pareho lang tayo.
the Secretary says he agrees 100%, Your Honor.
Because hindi tayo pareho sapagkat superpower yun eh. Pangalawa po, Mr. President, doon sa mga lugar na nabanggit ko sa China, kung meron man na illegal na kababayan natin nagtatrabaho doon, it is because yung trabaho doon ay hindi kayang gampanan ng Chinese national. Dahil hindi sila competent, hindi sila yung skill set nila, kaya po nakakapagtrabaho. So again, babalikan ko lang po yung sinasabi ko, Mr. President. Ang premise lang natin, hindi tayo pareho ng bansang China. Am I correct, Mr. President?
Yes, and they are saying, they agree with you that those countrymen, our countrymen who are there are mostly English teachers according to them. So thus agreeing with you that no local or Chinese could perform it within their country.
And even our service providers, Mr. President, they are not competent, they are not, perhaps not willing to do the job na ginagampanan ng ating mga kababayan. But anyway, Mr. President, I'd like to thank the distinguished gentleman and the leadership of DOLE. One last thing na lang po, no? Because during that hearing, ang sabi ho ng BI, more than half of the 119,000 na inisyuhan nila ng special working permit ay nagtatrabaho sa POGO o yung Philippine Offshore Gaming, whatever it is. Mr. President, ang isang tanong ko lang po, ito po yung huling issue na gusto kong pag-usapan natin. Granting without admitting na wala pong kababayan natin ang available or competent na gawin yung trabaho na ibinibigay sa mga banyaga, Mr. President, DOLE being the chair of the Board of Technical Education and Skills Development Authority, should also lead the way, Mr. President, na kung ito po ay emerging industry, emerging market, emerging sector that would create more jobs in the future, then it is just but proper for us to prepare and perhaps start training our people so that, again, if this is a growing industry at ako hindi ako naniniwalang 200,000 lang yung nakikita kong mga Chinese nationals na nagtatrabaho ngayon sa POGO. And hanggang ngayon po, bukas yung aking hamon sa lahat ng ahensya ng pamahalaan. I will bring them to all these condominium units, Mr. President, dyan sa Shell Residences, dyan po sa Makati, sa Palanan. Sinusundo, bus na bus, coaster, araw-araw, Mr. President. And again, kung legal po sila, wala naman po tayong problema doon. Ang point ko lang, Mr. President, DOLE being the chair of TESDA board, Mr. President, should also lead the way, Mr. President, doon sa, kung ito po ay emerging industry, let's do something about it. Anticipating natin na kung tatagal po ito in the next 5-10 years, ang TESDA ho ay may LSI, o Language Skills Institute. I will ask that question later when we deliberate the budget of TESDA. Nagtuturo po ng iba't ibang lingwahe. Kung Mandarin, nagulat po ako nung last hearing, sabi nung BI representative, wala daw makapagsalita ng Mandarin na Filipino. I doubt it, Mr. President. So, ito lang ho yung isang issue that I wanted to raise before we let go of the budget of the Department of Labor and Employment.
Thank you, Your Honor. We fully agree that language skills are among the wave of the future in terms of employment generation, and we will push TESDA in that direction as prodded by the good gentleman from Bulacan. And I'm sure there are many Mandarin speakers in the Philippines, Your Honor, that they just did not graduate from Xavier School.
And I hope, Mr. President, again, that the Department of Labor and Employment would be more proactive in this particular issue, because this issue is close to our stomach, Mr. President. This issue is close to our people. Maraming tao, walang trabaho. Pag walang trabaho, mahirap magkasakit. Pag walang trabaho, mahirap mabuhay sa mundo na ito. And ang pinakamasakit ho kung malalaman ng ating mga kababayan na mismong tayo ay nananakawan ng trabaho sa sarili nating bayan. And again, Mr. President, I'd like to thank the distinguished gentleman, the sponsor of the the budget of the Department of Labor and Employment and its attached agencies. And in the end, let me put on record that this representation will always stand with the department in ensuring full and gainful employment of all Filipinos. And rest assured, you have, Mr. President, Mr. Secretary, my full support. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. We thank the gentleman from Bulacan, the chairman of the Committee on Labor, for raising these very timely and important concerns and for always fighting for our workers, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Villanueva. Majority Leader.
Chairperson, Madam, Sir, Mr. President, may I ask for 1 minute suspension?
Session suspended.
Mr. President.
Session resumed.
Yes, there's just a request by our colleague that he has to leave by 11. So if it's possible, we suspend consideration on the budget of DOLE for a short period of time, and we move to resume consideration on the budget of TESDA. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none.
Maybe we can ask the DOLE just to remain in their seats, not to leave. And we'll just ask TESDA to occupy, I believe Chairman La Peña is here. Director General Ben, Director General. Oh, sorry, Secretary La Peña is here.
Guys will ask you to temporarily.
With that, Mr. President, may we recognize the sponsor, Senator Sonny Angara, to defend the budget of the Technical Education Skills Development Authority and to interpolate Honorable Senator Joel Villanueva.
Senators Angara and Villanueva are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to our dashing Majority Floor Leader, who is wearing a peculiar socks, Mr. President. May I ask if the distinguished gentleman, the sponsor of the budget of TESDA, yield to some questions from this representation, Mr. President?
Certainly, Mr. President, to the best TESDA Director General and Secretary in the history of mankind.
I am no longer pursuing my questions, Mr. President. Mr. President, kidding aside, may I just put on record also that this representation fully supports the budget of TESDA. But let me just point out some pressing issues. I think I have only 2 or 3 issues here, Mr. President. First is the, and I failed to ask this question during the budget of the Department of Labor and Employment. First, this Executive Order number 67 was issued just recently, and TESDA became or was transferred as an attached agency to the Department of Trade and Industry. Somehow, Mr. President, it finds logic in bringing TESDA policy directions nearer the employers and bringing employers to participate in shaping policies in TESDA. However, we learned, Mr. President, a couple of days ago that the Department of Trade and Industry were not consulted at all, Mr. President, with regard to this Executive Order number 67. Again, for the record, I'd like to put on record, Mr. President, that we are not questioning the authority of the executive. We're not questioning the authority of the President, since EO number 292, or the Administrative Code of 1997, provides that the President has continuing authority to reorganize offices under him. But just to put on record, was TESDA consulted on this move to transfer the agency from from, Mr. President, and let me put this on record, because if you look at the charter of TESDA, TESDA is an attached agency of DOLE. That's why I made mention a while ago that during my stint in TESDA, I was part of one DOLE, one family. And it was transferred to the Office of the President, and with the virtue of Executive Number 67, it was again transferred to the Department of Trade and Industry. May we know, for the record, Mr. President, distinguished sponsor, if TESDA was consulted on this move to transfer the agency?
Your Honor, Mr. President, according to the Secretary, they were informally consulted on it, and the Secretary gave his favorable comment because the idea was to solve the job skills mismatch problem, which the gentleman has been one of the those foremost at the forefront of trying to provide solutions to this long festering problem. And the idea is really to have industries ready to absorb our skilled workers, skilled and semi-skilled workers, Your Honor.
Mr. President, distinguished colleague, I respect the Secretary's view on this particular matter, but may I also ask if they would not be able to do this if it wasn't transferred as an attached agency of DTI? Because DTI itself stated that they would be able to do whatever they are mandated to do right now. Because if you look back, Mr. President, and I'd like to put this on record, the father of TESDA law, the literally the father of the distinguished sponsor, said the late Senator Ed Angara, made sure that these agencies will work together, and that's why they became part of the TESDA board, the Department of Trade and Industry, the Department of Education, the Department of Science and Technology, etc., Mr. President. So again, may I ask, hindi ho ba magagawa ito kung tayo ay mag-i-stay doon sa mandate at charter ng RA 7796 or the TESDA charter?
Ang sabi po ng ating kalihim ay pwede naman ho, tama po ang ating kasamahan, na pwede rin naman kasi co-chair naman ho yung secretary po ng DTI. But siguro dahil napakaseryoso na po ng problema at to give greater emphasis, they deferred to the wishes of the Chief Executive, Your Honor.
Well, I will no longer question the wisdom of the executive as well as the views of the Secretary of TESDA. I just hope and pray, Mr. President, that indeed we'll be able to solve a lot of issues, especially when you talk about job creation and the role of TESDA in providing quality skills training program that would help our kababayans land jobs. Mr. President, as earlier raised in the budget of the Department of Labor and Employment, may we know if TESDA is being consulted by DOLE or, for that matter, Bureau of Immigration before issuing alien employment permits or special working permits, Mr. President?
They said they are consulted by the DOJ, which is the mother agency of the BI, Your Honor. And I'm asking now what is their what opinion they give on that matter.
Specific skills and competencies po, kung hindi siya nakaswak.
With respect to POGO, what have you given any opinion? They've not been consulted on that. But on the issue of the online gaming, they've not been consulted on that, Your Honor.
I suppose, Mr. President, yes. I was anticipating that answer from the agency, Mr. President. And I was also surprised because during the hearing, the Bureau of Immigration made mention about that particular skill set, which is Mandarin-speaking Filipinos. Ang sabi po nila, 0 daw. Now, let me ask, if TESDA for the record, meron po bang tinatawag na Language Skills Institute ang TESDA? At ilan po ito at saan po ito matatagpuan, Mr. President?
Your Honor, according to them, there are 37 LSIs offering this, and one national language, and there are 951. About since 2015, for the years 2015, 2016, and 2017, there are 951 graduates for Mandarin courses, Your Honor.
That's very telling, Mr. President. 951 Mandarin graduates. I think we should furnish a copy of this hearing, Mr. President, to the Bureau of Immigration. 951, because they were saying not one Filipino can actually do or speak or communicate well with the Mandarin language, Mr. President. Mr. President, but with other skills, Mr. President, is TESDA being a proactive agency anticipating this emerging industries and sectors wherein they anticipate the number or the jobs that will be available in the future, and in its proactive response, ginagawa po nila ito at nagsisimula na po tayo ng training, Mr. President, para sa mga ito. For example, Mr. President, yung sa construction sector, ang sinasabi nila, yung mga highly skilled, highly technical, marami pa po ba ito, Mr. President? At kung lalago ito, again, yung question natin is that may ginagawa po yung TESDA, na-anticipate natin ito para sa ganon, pag dumating yung time na lumaki po yung demand dito sa trabahong ito, hindi po natin ito ipamimigay pa at ibibigay sa mga banyaga, Mr. President.
Your Honor, they are saying, as mentioned by the gentleman, that there is a National Language Skills Institute offering Mandarin, and they say that this can be expanded to offer more training slots, as many as 3,700, and perhaps to accredit more of the LSIs, include more of the private schools or institutions offering Mandarin, Your Honor.
I appreciate the response of the distinguished sponsor, but let me just put on record na lang, Mr. President, that the TESDA should be proactively involved in anticipating these sectors para not just the language skills institutes of TESDA or the Mandarin language, Arabic language, but other skills, Mr. President.
Ano pang language?
Kung meron other skills, Mr. President, other than yung pagsasalita ng ibang lingwa, sapagkat ang binabanggit nga po natin, importante na maging proactive po tayo doon sa mga growing or emerging industries na kung saan magkakaroon ng trabaho na available para sa ating mga kababayan. But again, kung hindi naman competent at hindi skilled ang ating mga kababayan, then itong mga trabaho na ito ay maaaring maibigay na naman sa mga banyaga. So yun lang po yung ating sinasabi, importante na maging proactive ang ahensya ng TESDA, being a proactive agency dito sa mga usapin na ito, Mr. President.
We agree with the gentleman, and for the record, they'd like to mention that they also have courses on Korean, Nihongo,
Yes.
Arabic, Spanish, Italian, French, Mr. President. But the point I think the gentleman is making is loud and clear, and they have to be proactive in this regard, Mr. President.
Yes, and I just hope na hindi lang ho dun sa language, Mr. President, but yung skills-wise and competencies. Mr. President, let me go to another issue, Mr. President, the issue on the universal access to quality tertiary education for TVET. I think it was yesterday, Mr. President, when Senator Ping Lacson raised this particular issue during the budget of the Commission on Higher Education. This representation, Mr. President, actually agree, Mr. President, with the fact that the reason why there's only 18% utilization, Mr. President, on that particular budget is because TESDA received the amount of, I don't know how much it is, they only received the money, was it September? September of this year. And so we cannot expect them to really obligate and quickly disburse the amount of money. But also, Mr. and for that, Mr. President, let me put on record my earlier position, not only with TESDA, with other agencies of the government, with NHA, with DOH, that we cannot, should not be our policy, Mr. President, for our people to suffer only because of inefficiencies of government agencies. However, Mr. President, I also cannot put the blame on the sponsor of the measure, considering that this representation has been with the distinguished sponsor since 2016 budget of Technical Education and Skills Development Authority. And historically, Mr. President, we have seen yung pong mga big chunk amounts of money na unutilized, Mr. President. For example, Mr. President, may I ask the distinguished sponsor, how much money is still pending with the TESDA board? Because I believe, Mr. President, yung UWACTEA is not just for tuition fees. Am I correct, Mr. President? It's not just for tuition fees. It's also for toolkits.
That's right, Mr. President.
Now, the special training for employment program of TESDA, which is STEP, toolkits din po yun. May I know, Mr. President, magkano ho yung pending na hindi pa rin nabibid, hindi pa rin nagagalaw doon sa TESDA board as we speak right now, Mr. President?
Thank you, Mr. President. For 2018, it's 5.6 billion, Your Honor.
5.6 billion, Mr. President. What would happen, Mr. President, if matuloy po yung by year-end, December of this year, Mr. President? And I think UWACTEA lang po, Mr. President, yung binabanggit ninyo. Hindi pa po kasama yata dyan, Mr. President, yung special training for employment program, yung pagbili ng toolkits. Hindi pa po kasama dun sa binanggit nyo. So it's more than that, Mr. President. Ang tanong ko po, kung matatapos po itong Disyembre at hindi po maipapasa ng both Congress yung extension ng paggamit ng MOOE at capital outlay ng mga ahensya ng pamahalaan for 2019. Ano po ang mangyayari sa pondo na ito, Mr. President?
Ay hindi po siya babalik sa Treasury po dahil trust fund daw ho ito at kahit next year po pwede nilang gamitin ho. As long as the program is ongoing, pwede po nilang i-access po yung pondo.
I beg to disagree, Mr. President. Let me talk about one specific item, Mr. President. Toolkits, Mr. President. Just toolkits. Yung pong dinideliberate ngayon ng TESDA board na paulit-ulit po. Hindi lang po yung pondo na galing sa Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education, but also STEP, Special Training for Employment Program. I think it's close to 1.2, 1.5 billion, Mr. President. Pag ito po ay hindi na-extend, ano ang mangyayari dito? I think it will go back to the Treasury, Mr. President, pag hindi na-extend. And that's why they are working very hard for both Congress, the HOR and Senate, to pass this resolution, Mr. President.
Okay, I stand corrected, Mr. President. And the program you are mentioning, you're correct, that will revert. The STEP program is not subject to the trust fund principle of non-reversion.
Yun po yung binabanggit natin. And that's why I somehow agree with the decision made by the distinguished sponsor na yung mga pondo na hindi magagamit kesa masayang, dalhin natin sa iba. But I also agree with Senator Lacson na hindi naman po dapat ipanish yung ating mga kababayan na gustong mag-training, gustong ma-empower at magkaroon ng hanap buhay, Mr. President. So, how do we strike a balance, Mr. President? May I just appeal to the good heart of the sponsor na na balansehin po natin, Mr. President. Baka may po pwede tayong gawin para hindi naman po mag-suffer yung ating mga kababayan na nag-e-expect ng free, quality, technical, vocational training, Mr. President.
Yes, definitely, Your Honor. We appreciate the comments, and definitely the gentleman knows this sector inside out and much more than this representation. And we appreciate his comments on our efforts to put the money where it can be used, because we can never recover the lost time. But we also appreciate his comments regarding the need for further training of our countrymen. So I think what we can say at this stage in response to the gentleman's concerns is that we are already talking with the TESDA about restoring some of the money realigned. And for the record, Your Honor, hindi po natin nilabas sa educational sector yung pera. In fact, the money that we felt, because given that there would be over 5 billion carried over into the 2019 budget from the 2018 budget for TESDA, we put it in CHED actually. And if I'm not mistaken, I recall the good gentleman from Bulacan, who is also higher education in addition to being a vocational education advocate, mentioned that he has also been pushing for the funding of the, I'm sure, because I'm sure just like me, there are also many SUC presidents knocking at his door and appealing for for finally that the salary increases promised by the DBM since 2015 or 16, I'm not sure, but for the last few years and unimplemented for the last 2 or 3 years will finally be realized. So all of these goals we are mentioning and the gentleman is mentioning, Your Honor, go towards providing quality education and opportunities to our countrymen. And like him, we are also trying to find the appropriate balance, and definitely we can commit that we will work with him, with Secretary La Peña, with Commissioner De Vera towards finding the right balance in our spending, Your Honor.
Thank you, and looking forward to working with the distinguished sponsor with this particular budget item, Mr. President, and we take the commitment of the good sponsor to look into this and ensure na may mababalik pong pondo para po dito, Mr. President. Mr. President, one last issue po sa akin, yung mga batas na ating pinasa dito sa Senado. Karamihan, if not all, Mr. President, co-author po natin yung sponsor ng budget ng TESDA at DOLE, Mr. President, si Senator Sani Angara. Kahapon po, Mr. President, the distinguished sponsor, when the distinguished sponsor is defending the budget of CHED, CHED officials put on record that it was TESDA and DepEd na hindi pa nakakabigay ng kanilang commitment, kaya hindi pa rin tapos yung pong IRR ng ating Philippine Qualifications Framework. Ito po'y naging ganap na batas na January of 2018. Mag-iisang taon na po, wala pa rin ho tayong kopya ng implementing rules and regulations, Mr. President. And yesterday, unfortunately, which I don't agree, Mr. President, but that's what we heard from the horse's mouth yesterday, that it was TESDA and DepEd na hindi pa nakaka-commit at nakaka-comply dun sa kanilang commitment para po dito sa ating IRR ng Philippine Qualifications Framework. May we know if this is affirmed by the good it's affirmed by the agency, Mr. President?
Yes, Your Honor, and they just to update the good chairman, there is a TWG on the PQF IRR set on December 18 by Yusek Malaluan of DepEd to synthesize what the results of the nationwide public consultations. They had 4 in August and September, and I think they're in the final stages, and I am informed that by the first quarter next year, the law which you authored will finally have the IRR.
Thank you. I'm glad that after a year, Mr. President, the IRR will be finally completed, Mr. President. But let me also put on record, Mr. President, that is it correct to say that the TESDA is remissing its duty to comply with its commitment to the IRR of our Philippine Qualifications Framework Act? Because I'm surprised, Mr. President, being a former TESDA chief, TESDA is very, TESDA is very passionate on this particular issue, and I know it very well, Mr. President, and that's why I was surprised yesterday when CHED officials were saying it was TESDA and DepEd's failure to comply with their commitment, Mr. President.
I think the TESDA has completed their part. It's just that nadadamay ho sila dahil sila po yung secretariat nung tatlong ahensya. So ang tingin ng iba, sila yung hindi compliant kasi sila yung nagsasubmit eh. Sila yung nagsisynthesize.
May you sila, Mr. President, because CHED is saying...
The CHED, the TESDA, and the DepEd ho.
Thank you. Thank you. It's clearer to me now yung pointing relationship ng mga ahensya, Mr. President. Mr. President, yung isa pa ho, yung kahapon, Mr. President, just yesterday, this representation together with our majority floor leader and the sponsor of the measure signed the bicameral conference report of the Tulong Trabaho Act or SB 1431. This bill specifically provides for upgrading of skills of employed workers who intend to develop and expand their current skills and training. And if ever this bill becomes a law next year, Mr. President, which we are all wishing for, what are the plans to immediately execute the Tulong Trabaho Fund? Meron po bang available fund na ready para dito for next year, Mr. President?
Your Honor, first of all, congratulations. I remember signing the Tulong Trabaho and admiring the bill crafted by the good gentleman. According to TESDA, they are committed to implement the law because it expands further access to technical education and skills development, and their assured TVET system can facilitate the development of new programs. And although funds for the specifically for the Tulong Trabaho are not yet available in 2019 for obvious reasons because wala pa ho yun nung ginagawa po yung NEP. But target beneficiaries under the law to come, or the law to be, these target beneficiaries, they can access the existing TESDA scholarship programs like the TWSP, the STEP, and the PESFA. And there are, is this 2018 or 2019? And for 2019, for the record, Your Honor, there's 2.36 billion for TWSP, 1.757 billion for STEP, and 200 million for PESFA for a total of 4.321 billion to be accessed by the beneficiaries of your law, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. President. But let me also volunteer myself, Mr. President, if in case we need to find additional funding for this particular measure, because this is very important. It doesn't only talk about free quality training program for our people, but it guarantees creation of jobs, Mr. President, because this will harmonize and encourage the partnership of TESDA with the different sectors, employment-generating sectors, Mr. President. For example, the semiconductor and electronics, the construction sector, the IT BPO, Mr. President. I remember not too long ago, Mr. President, when we had this particular program, we were able to, we managed to overtake India call center industry, Mr. President, because of this program. And I sincerely believe that we'll be able to do a lot more in not only creating jobs, but also establishing partnerships with emerging industries and sectors that would help our people land jobs, Mr. President. One last thing, Mr. President, is the favorite law of Secretary of Labor, RA 11058, or the Occupational Safety and Health Standards. I hope that the Secretary of Labor will continue to push for the passage of SOT, Dahil tingin ko yun ang mas magandang maging favorite law natin, Mr. President. But going back to RA 11058, Mr. President, the TESDA training regulation prescribes inclusion of safety and health as a common unit of competency. Relatedly, Mr. President, yung Section 16, Safety and Health Training, mandates that all workers shall undergo the mandatory 8 hours safety and health seminar. May we know from the good sponsor if TESDA is coordinating with DOLE on the requirements per Section 16 so that the vet graduate applicants would have a good understanding of OSH before they undergo the company-specific seminar, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President. Again, this is one of your babies as chairman of the Committee on Labor, and I was informed that the experts panel of TESDA is in touch with the experts panel of the DOLE regarding the OSH law, and they are trying to fine-tune. Yes, there is Department Order 198 series of 2018. I'm sure they have furnished you a copy. Meron na ba siya? Meron na.
I'm surprised.
Kahapon lang daw po nakapirma.
Salamat po.
I'm sure they will be furnishing you a copy because it's the first time I've also seen it, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate it. I think we both agree that this is an important initiative coming from the Department of Labor and Employment and with the help of Technical Education and Skills Development Authority. Again, I'd like to thank the distinguished gentleman from Aurora for his patience and his accommodation to the queries propounded by this representation. We thank the Secretary of Labor and Secretary of TESDA for their patience as well. Thank you. And again, let me put on record that I'm in full support of the budget of DOLE and the budget of my most beloved agency in the government, TESDA. Thank you, Mr. President.
We thank the gentleman for his always relevant and pertinent interventions and for following up on the laws, not just the paper law, but the implementation of the laws he has created, making sure that they are working for our countrymen, and we know he has to leave, and we are praying for good health always, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator
Mr.
Villanueva.
President, may we recognize Senator Risa Ontiveros for
Senator Risa Hontiveros is recognized.
Mix. Can we suspend for 1 minute, Mr. President?
Session suspended.
Babalik sa inyo? O tapos na kayo? Sa inyo yung tanong ni Senator Risa.
Tapos na sila, di ba?
Got it. Okay.
Session resumed. Senator Risa Hontiveros is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good sponsor, magandang umaga po. I just have 3 questions actually for the DOLE. As the good sponsor began discussing with Senator Joel earlier, Secretary Jokno and some senior DPWH officials believe that there are large labor shortages in the construction sector. May deklarasyon publicly si Sec Jokno sa kanilang interview sa ANC several months ago. At yung statement nila ay tungkol nga dito sa di umanong shortage ng Filipino construction workers at yung kahirapan daw sa construction industry makapag-hire ng construction workers para sa 75 major infrastructure projects sa ilalim ng Build program. Sinabi pa nila na the project could create 2 million jobs yearly for 6 years. Itatanong ko sana kung sumasang-ayon yung good sponsor sa statement na ito, na medyo sweeping kasi yung claim eh. Totoo bang may malaking kakulangan ng construction workers?
Meron. Yeah, the Secretary is nodding his head, Your Honor. And I remember I was in Iloilo a few months ago, and they said that they had to import workers. So maybe that's not an indication of the overall situation, but at least it is a pocket of which shows the situation in a given part of our country. But according to the Secretary, he agrees with the statement made by the good lady senator from Akbayan.
Actually, it's not my statement, good
Or
sponsor.
Secretary Jokno's statement.
Yes, I'm just quoting the Budget Secretary and DPWH. But fair enough, kung may anecdotal evidence from one province, and lalo na matimbang yung opinion ng Labor Secretary. Pero para siguro matulungan tayo sa Senado, buuin yung picture, tatanong ko na lang sana kung yung Institute of Labor Studies, for example, ay pwedeng tukuyin nila yung indicators para matrack nila, matest nila yung claim na ito. Specifically, Mr. President, good sponsor, I would like to request for a study or technical report by the DOLE tungkol sa bilang ng mga low and high-skilled Filipino workers at yung mga actually available at potential Filipino workers na pwedeng sanayin, pwedeng i-train na magtrabaho sa construction industry, Mr. President.
They said they are capable of doing that study, and it would just require close consultation and working together with the construction industry, Your Honor.
Okay. Good to know, good sponsor. So I think magandang area of common cooperation yan nakalatag sa harap natin after this budget interpellation. Cooperation also between not just the Senate or Congress at saka yung DOLE, pero pati yung isang section ng private sector. So salamat, Mr. President, good sponsor. Dun sa pangalawang tanong ko, yung colleague ko sa House of Representatives, good sponsor, si Akbayan Representative Walden Bello, ewan ko kung kamag-anak ng secretary, Walden at Kaka Bagaw, at ngayong representante Tom Villarin, nag-file po sila ng House Bill 2512 o yung wage fixing bill. Itong panukala nilalayo na i-address yung wage gaps na naging mas problematiko pa dahil sa RA 6727 o yung Wage Rationalization Act na isinabatas noong 1989. Meron po bang assessment ang DOLE sa pagpapatupad ng batas na iyan at yung trabaho ng nilikhang mga regional wage and productivity boards?
According to the Secretary, the minimum wage setting is a function delegated by us in Congress to the National, what's the NWPC? The Regional Wage and Productivity Boards, and they defer to our wisdom on the policy to be pursued. And as always, the DOLE stands ready to provide the necessary technical advice given its experience in minimum wage setting, Your Honor.
Again, good sponsor, fair enough, pero siguro we can go even farther tayo sa Senado, Kongreso at large, at yung DOLE. Lalo na po, medyo makasaysayan na yung advocacy ng kilusang paggawa na lumampas doon sa regional wage setting in the interest of social protection sa labor sector, katarungan para sa mga manggagawa at saka yung sustainable development din between and including all regions of the country. Yung advocacy po nila ng national wage setting or collective bargaining agreement at saka wage setting on an industry level. Pero in aid of that good sponsor, Mr. President, at tingin ko magiging malaking tulong ito sa ating trabaho sa legislation, pwede kayang ang DOLE pasok sila sa prosesong ito ng mga credible third-party experts na pwedeng basahin, pwedeng i-evaluate yung regional wage setting institution na meron tayo sa ngayon.
They would welcome that, Your Honor.
Thank you, good sponsor. And I think we would too here in the Senate. Kaya iulat ko to sa ating chair ng Senate Committee on Labor, si Senator Joel. Isa pang magandang pwedeng pagtulungan. Hi, Chair. So, naulat ko na pala. Hindi ko nalalaman. So, I also look forward to working with my chair on that, on this area of common concern. So, sa huling tanong ko po, Mr. President, good sponsor, yung Section 25 ng RA 11036, otherwise known as the Mental Health Law, ay nagsasabing mental health promotion and policies in the workplace. Employers shall develop appropriate policies and programs on mental health in the workplace designed to raise awareness, correct stigma and discrimination, identify and support individuals at risk, and facilitate access of individuals with mental health conditions to treatment. Bilang ang DOLE ay magiging bahagi ng Mental Health Council at kasama sila sa pag-draft ngayon ng IRRs, ano pong measures ang ina-undertake ng departamento bilang paghahanda sa pagpapatupad nitong section ito?
Well, they had consultations with all the stakeholders, and they are committing to complete the IRR of the said law, which the good lady senator was instrumental in shepherding here in the Senate by January 2019, Your Honor.
Great. That's a great Christmas gift, Mr. President, good sponsor mula sa DOLE sa ating mga kababayan. So, yun lamang po aking mga tanong, Mr. President. Marami pong salamat, good sponsor.
Maraming salamat to our friend Senator Risa for her concern for our workers and pushing forward also the laws we pass here and make sure they're implemented properly, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hontiveros. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. With that, no other members manifested to interpolate the budget of the Department of Labor Employment. I move that we close the period of interpolations to consider the budget of the DOLE, including the Office of the Secretary, Institute for Labor Studies, National Conciliation Mediation Board, National Labor Relations Commission, National Maritime Polytechnic, National Wages and Productivity Commission, Philippine Overseas Employment Administration, Professional Regulation Commission, and Overseas Workers Welfare Administration deemed submitted. Mr. President, I so move.
Any objection? Hearing now.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President, dear colleagues, Majority Leader.
I would like to do the same for TESDA, unfortunately, well, unfortunately for them. One of our colleagues had signified to interpolate Senator Richard Gordon. So he's on his way today. So we move to suspend session for a few minutes to wait.
Session suspended.
on his way? Kasi I'm not gonna lose,
Digs, si Tito Dig, mga 12 midnight tayo dyan eh.
Chair. We will have to tolerate the
Boss, thank you. I'm going to the order. May mamasabi.
Ready to resume, Mr. President?
session resumed.
Mr. President, we move to resume consideration of the budget of the Technical Education Skills Development Authority, and we'd like to ask the sponsor, Senator Angara, to sponsor the measure and to ask a few questions to Senator Richard Gordon.
Senator Angara and Senator Richard Gordon are recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I shall be quick because I have three people who are going to be citizens of this country, we hope. Good morning, Mr. Secretary. Good morning, Mr. Sponsor. Would the gentleman yield for a few questions?
Yes, certainly, to the good gentleman from Olongapo and Zambales.
I will just try to be very quick. TESDA is a very, very important arm of the government, and that's one of always been my advocacy, even when I was mayor of Olongapo and when I was in Subic. But what is important for me is that we make sure that the money that we're spending for this department goes a long, long way, especially since the target mostly are people who are not adequately educated. Is that correct, sir?
Definitely, Your Honor.
So we are also trying to create job opportunities, and during the last several days, as you know, the advocacy of this representation is to try to squeeze out opportunities in business from the Department of Trade, from other agencies of the country, and even in qualitative business, qualitative honing of our people from DOST and from the Department of Education and CHED. Now, in this particular instance, what is the total budget now of TESDA? Is it 9.8 billion?
It's 9,815,663,000 under the Senate Committee report, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. And we are addressing an unemployment of about 2.3 million people and underemployed of 29 million. And is this correct? Another, not in the labor force, of 13.8 million people. Would that be correct?
That's correct, Your Honor.
So the total size of Filipinos in need of technical and vocational education would be 45.8 million. Is that correct?
Workforce? Yes,
Almost
Your Honor.
45%.
Thereabouts, Your Honor.
Almost 45% of the population. Now, the gentleman who's involved with TESDA now did a good job in customs by raising revenues, but some pythons were able to get inside the chicken coop there and were able to bring in drugs, and which we're currently undertaking. And to be sure, I just want to let everybody know that I got tremendous information from the Customs Commissioner, who immediately picked up the fallen standard and helped me out in the investigation. I just want to know this is for the first time. So I'm very much in favor of Secretary Sidla Peña. Now, I understand that there was, and just I'll go to the crux of the matter. I understand that there was some budget that was provided for last year that was not spent because it was released only September this year, and that's at the total amount of
6.8. Ano, for September was 4.
was there such a thing that you were not able to spend? You were not able to spend because it was too late, the money was given too late?
Between May and September na obligate. There's, as we speak, Mr. President, the TESDA stands to carry over around 5.6 billion of its budget, which is one of the reasons why we transferred some of the appropriations for next year but we kept it within the higher education sector, but we transferred it to the SUCS and to CHED, Your Honor.
And is there any possibility of restoring that, principally because the higher education is well taken care of, I think, right now, although we still, as I said yesterday, need to use some more money for other things like national sports program in the education department. But on the other hand, I feel it's very important that we address the many who are out of school or people who just try to get a door opening so that they can have an opportunity. So, would the gentleman be, would it be the right move to try and restore this budget to TESDA, provided they can give us a program and maybe some oversight every quarter on how the money is being spent?
Yes, Your Honor. In fact, during the interpellations with the chairman of the Senate Committee on Labor, Senator Villanueva, we already committed to restore some of the budget.
That would be our friend from the UST, right?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yeah, the guy who knows how to play basketball very well.
Yes,
like,
Your Honor.
Like,
you like to praise him when he's not here, but when he's here, I'm just kidding.
He has always been a champion for TESDA. We call him the TESDA man.
Dapat nga, sabi ni Senator Recto, ibalik sa TESDA si Senator Joel.
Ibalik na lang natin.
Opo.
Ibalik na ba natin? I think I don't know what this,
sa galing niya, sa galing ho niya.
I think Senator Honasan has something to say about that because...
to Senator Gordon and Senator Angara, are we discussing the budget of the Sports Commission?
Well, the only reason why I raised that is because I think that there is a good track record on the part of Mr. Villanueva, Senator, and I'd like to see that that is maintained because he managed to make number 2 in the last elections, didn't he?
You sound surprised, Your Honor.
Well, you know, not surprised, but almoed chagrined. But levity aside, and, you know, we're working so hard here. As you know, we left last night at late and I had to go to another occasion. So I'm very happy that the gentleman from Aurora is following on the footsteps of his great father in making sure that vocational education, you know, the father of the gentleman from Aurora has done so much for the country and done a lot for young people. Even managed to swing a championship for the University of the Philippines way back 32 years ago.
And, it was much easier back then, Your Honor, and we thank the gentleman for his kind words.
No, I mean, you know, I've always been a great fan, so I have big shoes to fill. And so far, you managed to be a puss in boots, you know, being able to jump leagues, and I'm proud of you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So, Mr. President, that's all I want to ask. I just wanted to be assured that our folks in TESDA will have the tools that they want, that they need, and I'm sure the Secretary of TESDA, who has a new challenge, now he's a cabinet secretary, he's a whisper away from the President, and I'm sure he can get the job done.
Certainly, Your Honor, we commit, as we committed earlier, to consult the gentleman on the return of funds, and definitely that will happen. Fleshing out the details and perhaps asking some commitments also from the agency regarding the ability to obligate the funds, Your Honor.
Just one more. I mean, you know, as you know, I've been in the Red Cross for more than 50 years, and to me, I'm a great believer in volunteerism. And to my mind, we don't really need another cabinet for disasters. But I think if we have a volunteer army of people in the education department who know how to address themselves and comport themselves when there's a disaster. Certainly, when we have a lot more people who are in TESDA, who can be given the opportunity to do CPR, first aid, that is also a way upon which we can get them jobs, because if they have an extra skill like that, it will be easier for them to get jobs. So the gentleman agree?
Definitely, Your Honor.
And the last question I would have is, I think, we would like to embark with TESDA on training for first aiders, what we call emergency management folks. And is that part of the agenda? And we would like very much to work with them on this. You know, for some reason, the Department of Health have not much respect for skills. They have more respect for title. And I'm going to address that when the Department of Health comes in. You know, in other countries, all you need to do is have a high school graduate to be able to have, to be qualified to be an ambulance rider with emergency management capability, and they can even upgrade it. So we would like to see TESDA do that sort of thing, because I've been to the Middle East, and I have a lot of people there who manage to get very, very, very good jobs with great pay, especially in Qatar, where they're about to have the Olympics, or rather the football, the World Cup. And they're really preparing themselves for a lot more ambulances and a lot more people from the Philippines who can be trained. So I hope that the gentleman will see his way clear in convincing TESDA to keep a little bit more of an eye for that sort of thing.
Yes, Your Honor. I think they're already working with the Red Cross, I was informed. And I think they're willing to further this partnership with the Red Cross.
Far be it from my mind to try and convince them, because we're here in the Senate. I just think it's really a need for our country. And I think TESDA would be a very good vehicle to get a lot of young people who can help us during disasters and get more jobs abroad. Certainly when you apply for a job and you have skills and you don't have a diploma, the diploma-oriented companies might say, oh, what else can you do? Well, you know, I know first aid and I know how to handle disasters, and they'll probably get a better job because of that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Your Honor. Gentleman from Olongapo Zambales, who, as we all know, has created many jobs all over the country.
Thank you. Congratulations to the gentleman from Aurora.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. President, leader, gentlemen. With that, we move that no other members manifested to interpret the budget. We move that the budget of the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority be deemed submitted. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none.
Mr. President, the other agencies are lined up for this afternoon. Let's have a lunch break. So I move that we suspend session and deliberation of the budget until 1:30 in the afternoon. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? Session is suspended until 1:30 this afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. President.